Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cheaper Than Therapy. So, we are talking to Veronica today, and Veronica is with us actually for her second time. But we're going to talk about something a little bit different, but also, connected to history, as everything always is. So, Veronica, you wrote in and were saying that you're finding yourself kind of being activated or triggered when you're with at least one specific friend's family, or at least that's what kind of made you notice this activation, right? Because the friend's family is very peaceful and calm. And what you find happens when you're in that environment is you don't know what to do with yourself. You're kind of uncomfortable there. You're activated by it, right? It feels unfamiliar to you because you grew up in a pretty chaotic environment. And it almost seems almost like overwhelming for you, right? And I guess the question that I kind of got out of what you sent us was not only how do I kind of stay present and be present in these environments, but also potentially how do I talk about this stuff with my friend, right? Because it feels like maybe you kind of dipped out and weren't really able to share with her what happened for you. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Thank you for summarizing that. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's actually happened to me a couple of times. I mean, I've been doing a lot of, so to speak, undoing when it comes to my background. It took me a while to understand that what I grew up with was not, in fact, healthy. It's taken me a long time to sort of find a new baseline, right? And I see how, in lack of a better expression, the universe sort of meets you where you're at. And it's been equally spectacular to see that people, both from the past, but also new people, have shown up in my life that are
Mm.
really lovely, that are really stable. I mean, everyone's got their skeletons and whatever. No one's completely perfect and clean, and I suppose that's also a blessing because that makes us human. But I'm finding myself at a place in life where I am at a really beautiful location. I'm surrounded by lovely people. I'm also in a good workplace, and I'm finding myself in a state of calm, like quite often. And I've also been seeing a couple of guys. One of them specifically has caught my attention. He's very calm, very stable as well. No drama, no nothing. And especially when I was at the dinner with my friend's family, that has happened a couple of times. I've been asking myself, what is happening in my body? Why is this coming up for me again and
Mm-hmm.
again? Because if it comes up once or twice, fine,
Mm-hmm.
like you're just out of it or whatever. But this literally, I'm literally feeling these jitters in
Mm.
in my system. I'm feeling disassociated. I can't sleep the night after. I'm totally zoned out. It's as if I'm seeing myself, and I'm
Mm.
feeling also very self-conscious and awkward in that setting, even though no one is looking at me. I've never been socially anxious, but I think this is what social anxiety probably feels like.
Mm-hmm.
You feel watched somehow. You don't really know what
Mm.
to do with yourself. Everyone's sort of minding their own business. There's nothing happening. There is not. Whereas I know that the sick part is that if there would be, and I've been in those situations before, if there would be some conflict going on, drama, someone trying to figure something out with someone looking at you weirdly, then I'd be like, yeah, I know what's going on. I know my way
Mm.
around,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, in some sense, I'm feeling, I know factually that where I'm at right now is because I have been taking those steps towards recovery. I have been doing the somatic therapy, the all kinds of therapies for whatever how many years, and taking care of myself and stuff like. But at the same time, when it meets me,
Mm-hmm.
when that sort of frequency meets me, finally, I'm like a deer in the headlights.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I can't sleep, and I need to go running. I mean, I've been an athlete my whole life, but now it's just like I'm running, but I'm disconnected from my body. I know how it feels to go on a run when you're really
Yeah.
with yourself. I know how it feels to go to class when you're with yourself. But now it's just like I'm finding myself sort of almost shaking sometimes, and
Mm.
I'm wondering, like, am I gonna be okay? Like, what the hell is
Mm.
happening? And
Mm.
of course, it feels strange. It's an out of body experience
Yeah.
almost.
You know, Veronica, what I was going to ask you to do was bring us into some of the sensations that were happening for you on a somatic level. I actually think you started to do that really beautifully. So there's a lot of, dropping in and coming into the space of conscious awareness of what I'm feeling, where I'm feeling it, what are these sensations like if I had to describe them, which is an indication that you are already doing some of this somatic work. I think what ends up happening, I find a lot of times, is if we have spent a lifetime learning to, as a survival mechanism, disassociate from some of these feelings of overwhelm, when they come back in, that can feel like I'm activated, I'm triggered, there's
Mm.
something wrong. When actually, to me, it's a little bit like the self coming back online a little bit, if that makes sense. And so, um, a lot of times when it feels like, well, I've never had social anxiety before, a lot of what that has been like, well, I've been a little bit numb to the sensations of what that would even feel like. And a lot of times,
Mm,
numbness we experience is like, I'm not feeling anything, but
Mm-hmm.
it's actually like I'm at capacity with the feelings that I'm not giving myself the space to titrate into feeling and allowing myself to feel. So, what I would start with, and when I work with clients with social anxiety, I always attempt to support, because this has been what I think has been most helpful for me on
mm,
my path with social anxiety, is how do I get outside of the experience of what's happening for me and into curiosity around like what's happening for another person. So I look for the
Mm.
person who seems like they might also be anxious, or look for the person who feels like they might be struggling with something, and I figure out like, how can I be supportive of them? How can I be so curious about their experience, attempting to make them feel better? Like, I hold space for them. I don't know why it works. It just works for
Mm-hmm.
me, to sort of alleviate some of that social anxiety if I become like the space holder, right? Um, and so I guess that would be like, well, I guess first I want to hear what that brings up for you as I say that.
So what you mean is to snap myself out of myself a little bit and see if I can engage with someone else that feels in a similar way.
Well, even that language feels a little bit like self-flagellation, like snap yourself out of it. Like, no,
No, but that's what I say to myself.
I mean, that's kind of what I think. Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's,
but that's
it's that thing of like, how do I get out of my experience and
Mm.
into the space of supporting someone else in theirs, right? And it's not to shame myself. It's like, I
mm,
think so often what makes whatever the sensation is bigger is that
Mm.
we're making ourselves wrong for it. Like,
Yeah.
I should
mm,
be able to hold it together. They're going to think I'm weird. What is wrong with me? Why can't I
exactly.
just act normal? And it's like, nope, there's anxiety here. How human, as you said, beautiful, right? And I'm sure because I'm human and because we humans get social anxiety, I can't be the only one experiencing this. So, how
Mm.
do I hold space for someone else right now?
Mm.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've never, as you can imagine, when you're in that space, you're literally your head is going 150 miles per hour, wondering, does everyone notice?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And these are not new people. These are people I've known for 12 years. I mean, my whole adult life, and they're just happy to have me. And there I
Hmm.
am sitting for the fifth time at a random dinner at 6 p.m., freaking out inside of myself, literally needing to go to the bathroom like three,
Mm-hmm.
4 times,
Yeah.
breathing on the floor, thinking, am I ever going to be okay if this is how I react to something so low key
Hmm.
that, and it's the same thing, very, very similar things come up with me, for example, with people, new people, for example, when I create new connections with people that are perfectly safe and perfectly stable, and you can see that like a part of me, it's almost like a splitting. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something I also wanted to address. Like, it's as if there is one part of me that sees and can evaluate, yeah, this person seems to be in a good place in life. Like, I know enough by now. I've read 58 books this month or whatever, and listened to however many hours of podcasts to know how to sort of factually weed out the people who's got too much drama going on, or too, whatever. And factually, I can see that that person is genuinely interested in me, or they're genuinely like enjoying themselves with me, whatever. Whereas another part of me is like, no, 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 run away. That
Mm-hmm.
this is There is something dangerous here. but there is no danger at all.
Well, I would say too, I mean, you seem like you have a very good grasp on the why behind this, right? So, like, I didn't grow up in a very kind of safe, stable environment. And so that's kind of what feels normal or natural to me, right? So when something feels calm and safe, then that doesn't feel natural. And here's what I mean, our nervous system becomes kind of addicted to that heightened level of drama, right? And so I like to use this idea of like base levels. So it's like if we look at, you know, our nervous system as like a 0 to 10, and 10 being kind of like that I'm losing it. Like I've exploded. I've, you know, whatever the way is that you react when kind of you hit your breaking point.
Yeah.
And then obviously we look at 0 as like, I'm dead. I feel nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of us, we would say, let's have our base level be like, I don't know, around 3 or 4, right? But for a lot of us who grew up in chaotic environments, our base level becomes like a 6 or a 7 or even higher. And so that becomes where we function from, right? And so what happens is anything that feels like it's below a 6, 7, 8 feels unsafe, because it feels like if I let my guard down, something bad's going to happen, right? Because I need to stay hyper activated all the time, right, in order to make sure that things are okay and that I'm safe. And if we understand that in essence, it is a little bit of like, okay, my nervous system is almost addicted to this heightened perspective, right? This heightened level. Then just like kind of any working through an addiction, I have to almost give myself the experience of what that's like. And I have to do it frequently. And I have to sit with what comes up for me, right? And I have to be able to have a toolbox of things that I reach for when I feel activated, when I feel unsafe, when I notice that I'm overwhelmed by, let's say, the safe or the calm. And I breathe through it. I work through it. And I give my nervous system, you know, Dene used that word titration. It's like I give my nervous system the experience of dipping into a 3. Holy crap, this feels uncomfortable, but I'm going to stay here. I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to feel what I feel. Okay, now bink, I kind of pop back to a 7. And then I give my nervous system another experience of like a 3 or a 4. And I'm activated. I'm overwhelmed. I feel what I feel, right? And then bink, I might pop back up to a 6 this time. And so it's this experience of kind of going back and forth, playing around in that range until your system starts to expand its tolerance for those kind of lower level, I don't know, activation points, for lack of a better term. Does that make sense?
It does very much, because exactly as you say, like, I'm so used to 6, 7. In fact, I was meditating on this the other day, and in fact, I remember when there was some sort of a calm in my home as a child, that meant that shit's going down and
Right.
it's 5 minutes away.
Right. Calm
6.
actually meant danger, period.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. When there was silence, that meant that something was brewing.
Mm.
When there was an eruption, we knew what was going on. There was some sort of chaos and no one could really predict anything. And my mother was very deeply mentally ill, and my dad very codependent, still is. But at least we knew the drill. When there was silence or safety or even a smile or whatever, then something was off. And so today, when I see something that's completely normal and completely not charged, I still feel that nervousness. And so when you mentioned the toolbox, right? What would you suggest I do in these situations? Like, would you suggest I stay in them? I go through it? Would you because my immediate reaction to it is to remove myself and to find
Right.
my safety again in, say, going exercising or whatever, distracting myself even sometimes, like listening to something, going out, whatever. But I do notice very soon that it's not a functional thing to keep doing, because at one point or another I'm going to have to face the fact that I need to learn to function in a new way. It's almost like speaking a different language. But it's scary because I don't really know what to do and how.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of double down on what I said before, given what Vanessa said, because I agree with you, V, but I also think that, you know, when we think about anxiety or depression, often like those can be addictive thought loops and ways that we are like,
Mm.
in an egocentric experience of what is happening for me. And similar to any sort of 12-step program or any sort of addiction recovery, so much of the work of why they have you be of service and get out of your head and into the fellowship of supporting others is because not only does it sort of get us out of that repetitive thought loop of me and what's wrong with me and why I'm broken and those things that like we can get really in addictive loops with, but also we build self-esteem and we build that sense of like, I got this, and that sense of resiliency when we do things that are like esteemable acts, when we do things that make us feel good about the way I'm showing up for others. And so often, like you described, like people are curious about me, they're wanting to talk to me, but I'm in my thought loop of what's happening
Mhm.
for me. But if I shift it to how do I be curious about them? How do I be in the space of how I can show up for them? A little bit, it gets me out of that like repetitive thought loop and into the space of like, how can I be supportive of this person and making them feel better? Which I find can be that thing that brings us into the space of like, because I find, Veronica, there's a way that we can just be like reaffirming for ourselves there's something wrong with me. I grew up in a way that like made me broken or whatever the thing is. And that in and of itself becomes my next form of an addictive tendency. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you see what comes up for me when you say service and when you say um, engaging with someone else. The immediate reaction is, yeah, that creates connection and that's risky.
Mm-hmm.
You see, what happens is that, and this has happened to me several times, is like, oh, but if you meet someone little bit closer, a little bit closer, it's all nice and beautiful until there is that point where you realize, and I'm literally terrified of
Mm.
actually being like, even with my close friends, it's
Mm-hmm.
absurd. I'm experiencing this fear, like primal fear of there being a connection between, like, when you serve someone or when you're with someone or when you do something, even with colleagues, that it's like this little free fall sensation of,
Mm.
oh wait, now we're connected, it means that that person, well, at the end of the day can hurt me, or I've left a little piece of myself with them.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not casual, it's not something that I've invested that I'm prepared to lose.
Well, let
Mm-hmm.
me interrupt for just a second. Now
Hmm.
I've connected with this person. That means they have a little piece of me. Keep going. So they have a piece of me. And then what are they going to do with that? What does that mean to me?
That they can use it against me, that they can use it to hurt me
And how would they do that? Say more.
by allowing me to grow close to them and then grow distant,
Mm.
by betraying my trust, by sharing what I have shared in confidence with others to humiliate me. I mean, as you see, I'm speaking from the past, but
Mm-hmm.
that
Mhm.
leaves traces, and essentially using me as disposable for their own needs,
Mm.
for their own satisfaction, for their own purposes or fulfillment at the time.
Yeah. Big breath, right? Because,
Yeah.
as you see, we sort of circled back to a way that I am defending against connection because I am attempting to get my needs met through the dynamic with this person or what I believe would be an attachment that makes me feel safe or otherwise. But it's still like in the like of service of me, right? What if I framed it as like, this is what I'm offering with like no desire for anything back
Mm,
from this. This is my offering for this evening, right? Like maybe I never see this person again. Like I want you to like start a little bit smaller, like the
mm,
bite size of like, what if I just see a person
Mm-hmm.
and I actually get to decide if and when I ever want to be in connection with this person again. I don't have to. But if I just have like an offering of like, here's a little bit of Veronica that I'm offering into the world just for tonight, like maybe I make one person's day a little bit brighter by caring about how they feel. by, offering them. That was really interesting what you just said. And maybe saying something supportive, so small, of like, I love your shirt. Like, we think like big a lot of times, and it can feel flooding to our nervous system. Whereas if it's just like, I am being of service, but literally, this is the important part, but I don't want anything from this person. I'm not actually in the playing out the like where it's going to go from here, because that's where I start to like get into the play in my head of where this is going to go. And then if this happens, I need to do this to defend against this. And all of that is like arguable. And it's not anything that's happened yet. And as you said, it's me sort of in that space of what is historic versus the present centered awareness of what is happening right now. So if I just start a little bit small, like, how do I just be present with this person for just this moment, offering a little bit of grace, a little bit of me seeing you without any desire for it to be anything more than that. And beyond that, I get to come back to the moment and decide. Do you know what I mean? And
Wow, I've never heard anyone say it that way. That's very new, but very helpful, I think, because at the end of the day, if we look at it from a universal perspective, the present is all we have anyway.
that's right.
So creating timelines in our heads is sort of a desperate attempt for safety, I suppose, by the brain, which never really works because none of us really knows in our heads what is to happen. And so that will be very helpful. I'll try. I'll certainly fail to practice it, and I will attempt again and again, because that's also scary. Because to live in the moment and not create a narrative in one's head is sort of surrendering. It's not sort of, it's surrendering essentially.
That's right. Yeah.
Which up until now has also been very scary because everything has been outside of one's control because one hasn't spent most of life as an adult.
And I think too, like building on what Dene said, you practice that, and it kind of all kind of loops back to what I was saying about that titration as far as expanding your nervous system's window of tolerance for the discomfort, right? So you practice that, you practice the presence, you experience what that feels like. And each time you kind of do that, you are actually expanding that tolerance, right? So you might not realize it, the incremental changes. It might be like you blink your eyes and you're like, oh, damn, I just went through an entire dinner and never had that experience of feeling anxious or, watching myself from outside myself or even thinking about myself because I was engrossed in this conversation or whatever it looks like. But in my experience personally, but also with clients, it is the macro is like, just know that this is in service of that slow kind of increased capacity for more connection, but it takes time. It's not going to happen in the blink of an eye,
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah. Thank you, Veronica. Will you keep us posted again?
Yeah,
I love
will.
this.
I certainly will. It certainly is a long timeline. And I suppose just like with anything else, you can't grow muscles over a month or 2 months. You have
That's
to
right.
give it a while. And I suppose that's the best lesson we can have our body. And it's both, it's the same with the nervous system, I suppose, as well.
And I just want to speak back to you something you said that was unbelievably wise. You said, like, anything beyond this present moment isn't real. The future's an illusion. When we're in the future, it'll be another now, right? So if I just focus on how am I doing right now? What's happening in my body right now? I don't have to worry about the like where this will go and if I'll be able to sustain it and what it'll look like in the future. Because, if we bring it back to that addiction model, a lot of times you'll hear people say in recovery rooms, like, pillow's the bullseye. Like, I'm not going to worry about the rest of my life. And if this is going to be me in relationships and what it's going to look like, I'm just going to focus on what I can do right now and how I can like attempt to show up for myself right now. And that's enough. And then as V's speaking to, all of a sudden we surprise ourselves. We've accumulated like several dinner parties and a community of people around us that feel safe, but we don't have to worry about that. Like, we just focus on like what I have control over, which is the moment I'm in, where my feet are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing this to us. I feel like I said before we started recording, I was saying I think this is something that a lot of people will resonate with because I think it's something that a lot of people experience in their own way. And so, I appreciate you kind of bringing it to the table and keep us posted. Let us know how things are going, and maybe after a dinner party or two, send us a note. Let us know what the experience has been.
Will. Yeah. Thank you so much. Really. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Veronica.
Take care, love.